How's it going, guys, and welcome back to another video. I still hate doing intros, but it's okay. I have my cold brew. And it's been quite a productive morning. It's 9 a.m. right now. I went for a run. I actually didn't sleep last night, which is always nice. I love when that happens. It's honestly the best feeling ever. If you can't tell if I'm being sarcastic, I honestly can't tell either. I do like the feeling, but I know that it's not a good thing. But anyway, yesterday I tried to record an episode and it just didn't work out, so we're gonna retry today. I want to try to explain how running taught me to slow down and how I have learned how to separate the difference between pushing ourselves and being too hard on ourselves. And there's a very thin line between the two. And I feel like I kind of am able to give my take on this topic because I've been in a place where I've pushed myself way too much to an extreme where I couldn't keep going any longer because it became unhealthy. And I had to learn how to challenge myself in a healthy way, just enough for it to be I'm pushing myself outside my comfort zone and it's benefiting me, but it's also not harming me because I'm not doing it to an extreme where I can no longer, handle it. And I feel like something that, is important to mention with all this is that there's a huge, I think, societal expectation that adds a lot of pressure on us to constantly be the best version of ourselves and to constantly have to be working hard and it's we're only worthy when we're productive and a lot of that does come from societal expectations, which is why it's so easy for us to be way too hard on ourselves, and we let it happen. We sometimes we're aware of it and we kind of just justify it because we're this is the only way that I can feel worthy, so I'm gonna keep pushing myself and never ever going easy on myself because as soon as I take a break I'm no longer worthy, and obviously this looks different for everyone. Everybody applies this to something different. I've seen it happen to other people with different things than the way that it happened to me. The way that I experienced it was mainly through running, but I've seen it happen to other people with their jobs or with school or whatever, and sometimes it's a bunch of different things. So I kind of want to talk about why I learned about this through running. And I feel like my running journey, which started in 2021, even though it's not that long, it did teach me a lot. And a lot of the things that I take from running are things that I apply to real life. which I love. I'm so grateful that running allows us to do that. Running is great. When I first started it, it was the best part. Like, the beginning is always honestly the best part, the beginning of anything. But I discovered running on my own. I feel like everybody has their own, story with running, of how they started and how they discovered it and how they got into it. For me, it was like, I wanted to get in shape for soccer. I wanted to get more fit. I wanted to get better. And then I fell in love with running and I quit soccer, basically, to make it short. At the beginning, running was all those amazing things, it gave me a sense of quiet in my life, a quiet that I longed for. It gave me a sense of slowness. It slowed down things when things were happening, too fast in my life. And even though, the irony here is that, like, you run because you want to get faster, but what running does to your life is it slows it down, which is beautiful. It gave me amazing people, amazing relationships, memories, all that. A kind of peace also, like, that you don't really find anywhere else. All those things, all those amazing things. Running on its own, like, the essence of it is so beautiful. I fell in love with it so quickly. And it quickly turned into an obsession. I was like, oh my God, this is like the best thing ever. Where has it been all my life? Like, it is making me feel amazing. I'm kind of good at it. I want to keep doing this and only this. And the thing is, I feel like ever since I was a kid, I kind of just always had this idea of, like, I want to become a pro athlete. I didn't always, like, know exactly what. At some point, I thought it was going to be soccer. But then when I switched to running, I was like, yep, I'm going to be a pro runner. So there was always this thought in my mind that I had to be the best athlete I could possibly become. And so when I decided, like, oh my God, running is amazing, I was like, this has to be my thing. Like, this is the thing. So my whole life became revolved around running. And this was for, like, maybe 2.5 years. And so I was, like, pushing people away. I was ignoring my friends' texts, no longer hanging out with them, barely going to see my family. I was very hard on myself. I was like, I have to sleep at a very specific time. I have to wake up at a very specific time. I have to eat very specific food at very specific times. Everything has to be like this. And in a way, to me, that was a way of coping. When you find an obsession and you absolutely put your all into it, is a way of coping, because you're like, now that I found my thing, nothing else in my life can ever disappoint me. So you're like, if people hurt me, it doesn't matter. If I fail at school, doesn't matter. If I lose my job, doesn't matter, because I have this thing. But what happens when you fail at that thing? That's what we are so blinded from seeing when we are sucked into it. When we're so obsessed with it, we can't even consider the fact that we might, this thing might disappoint us one day, But anyway, it's a way of coping, right? Because you're like life is shit. I'm just gonna focus on one thing and not think about. I'm gonna run away from all my problems, and I'm gonna put all my energy into this one thing. And even though we see it as like a way of coping, and we think that this is helping us, it actually does the opposite, because it's in the long term negatively affecting so many things about our lives, like our mental health, our relationships to other people, all that. But in the short term, we think it's good for us because we can only see what's happening in the moment. We're like, oh my God, I'm getting all these medals, I'm getting all these trophies, amazing times, amazing accomplishments, my body looks great, feels great. But in the long term, we're pushing people away. We're not aware of everything else happening in our life. We're not keeping a balance of things. And the thing that happened to me was I reached a point where I pretty much woke up one day and I was like, I don't want to go. It became so hard to juggle all things at once. It hit me at some point. I'm like, my body can't physically keep going. And that's when you kind of like hit rock bottom and you're like, holy shit, like, I just don't even want to go anymore. And everybody's experience is different. And my point behind all this is not to say that running is bad. Running is great. But there's a very, there's a very big possibility of this happening. And this does occur to a lot of people, I think. When you're not careful and when you're not aware, this tends to happen. And it took me like a little over a year to realize it. But I was doing therapy at the time, and I was talking to my therapist, and I was like, I don't think I want to run anymore. Like, I just straight up don't want to run. Like, I just don't want to go to training. And that was it. And that's how I knew that there is that thin line between, pushing ourselves and being too hard on ourselves. And I was like, I kind of had to think about, well, I know that pushing myself is a good thing. I know that we need to push ourselves in life because life sometimes is difficult and we need to get through these difficult times by pushing ourselves to do these uncomfortable things. Otherwise, if you keep doing what's easy and what's comfortable, then that's also not a good thing. You're probably gonna have depression, or it's also going to affect your mental health negatively. Even though sitting in bed all day can be good for us sometimes, doing it for too long doesn't always end well. We all know that, I think. Or at least in my experience, it hasn't been a great thing. So when it comes to running, I had to take a long break to forget about it completely. I had to feel like I wanted to, find myself outside of running, because I became so attached to it that it kind of was my whole identity. And I just wanted to stop and see what my life was like, who I was going to be like without this thing in my life. And again, it doesn't have to be this way for everyone, but this is how it was for me. And so eventually I missed running after like a year and a half of like not really training or whatever. Eventually I missed training. I missed having it in my life, a part of my routine. But I was like, how am I gonna, take this thing seriously again without letting the same thing happen, without becoming too obsessed? And honestly, there isn't one way of doing it. There's no like magic spell. And even the advice that, I am about to give that I learned doesn't maybe like maybe it doesn't work for everyone, but maybe it helps to be aware of these things. But honestly, the biggest thing I learned was that it's kind of a mentality that you have to practice, and it's things that you have to manifest for yourself. And a big part of me learning to love running again, the same way that I loved it when I first started, and to be reminded of the good things that running gave me in my life. A lot of me getting back to this was sitting with myself for long hours, self-reflecting, and journaling. And I let myself run by myself for a while. And what I would do is, I think a lot of people know this, but or every runner knows this. When you haven't ran for a while, or when you have never ran and you start running for the first time again, it's really hard, no matter who is doing it, whether they're like a world champion or a world record holder, and they haven't done it in a while and they're getting back into it. It's hard and it sucks. And so I was at that point where I made the decision of okay, I want to get back into this. And I knew it was going to be hard. I was aware of that. I was like, my body hasn't, done this in a while, and I'm not fit and I'm not in shape. So I was aware that I was going to suffer. I was also aware that I was going to be very slow in comparison to my previous self. And a big thing that I told myself was, it's okay to be slow. And I feel like that's one of the biggest takes I took. A big thing that allowed me to enjoy running again is no longer being so obsessed with the pace and the time. And so a lot of the time I would go and run without my watch. I didn't want to know the distance, the time. I just wanted to run because I loved running, because it made me feel good, because it made me feel happy. So I would just go and run, and something that really would motivate me is I would record myself and short videos after every run, kind of just videos for myself. It's a form of journaling. I would kind of just record how I felt on the run, and all that. And every day I was motivated to do these videos because I would look back at them and I would see progress. I'd be like, oh my god, that first week I was so terrible, and now I feel a lot happier when I run. It feels a lot easier. And so I feel like keeping record of how you felt in every run is such a helpful thing. For me, another thing that really motivated me was keeping a training log. Now, this is if you want to be very committed. But even that beginning part, if I did go out and wear a watch, I would come back and keep track of my runs every single day. I would put the date, and I would put what I ran, times, and then I would, in a small paragraph or sentence, I would say how I felt and what I did. And I don't always have to record the times, but if I have a workout day, then I'm going to do that. But another big thing that I learned was that if I did go on a run and wear a watch, I don't have to constantly be looking at it. Something about the watch just messes up your approach to running, because a watch can easily make it seem like all that matters is the numbers, not how you feel, or but again, it's okay. You can have a watch, you can not have a watch, you can everything works in some kind of balance. As long as we're trying to be aware of how much of our energy we're putting into things, how much we're becoming obsessed over things when we need to maybe chill and take it down a notch. The thing that I had to really manifest for myself is the approach towards running, telling myself that the thing that matters most is that I have this health and I have this capability of running. And a lot of people don't have that. And I had to remind myself to be grateful for this, because when I was so sucked into it, I took it for granted. And so I had to write it down on my journal. I am so grateful, to have this body that allows me to do this. So sometimes all it takes is just reminding ourselves, to be grateful for, being able to do this. I had to remind myself that this is something that I choose to do. This is not something that I have to do. Even if I'm a part of a team, even if, whatever. It's still something that I choose to do, like nobody is forcing me into this. That's the best thing about running, is that it's an individual sport and we truly do it for ourselves at the end of the day. No matter how much pressure from people we have on us, we do it for ourselves. When it gets to a point where it's unhealthy, we are doing it for other people. Like with me, at some point I was doing it for other people because I had lost myself and the numbers and my accomplishments, that I was doing it for other people because I had so much expectation and whatever. But at its core, we do run for ourselves, and I had to remind myself of that. Running also enabled an eating disorder in me, and it does that to a lot of people. When you become obsessed with running, you also become obsessed with food. Not all the time, but this is common for a lot of people. Because for me, at least, I wanted my body to feel good for my runs, and so I wasn't eating enough, and I had to, after I took a break from running, I had to also learn to fix my relationship with food again. And so one big thing that helped me with all this was truly detaching myself from the concept of numbers, whether that's numbers with like food, with macros, or numbers with running. So when I do a workout, even though it's like with a team and it's like an official like workout, I'm not looking at my watch. I'm not, obsessed with what my times were. I'm just trying to keep up with the team and hope for the best. I just had to let go of how attached I was and obsessed I was with these things. Even with food, with macros, I ate to fuel my body. I had to tell myself I eat to feel good for my day, basically. I have to fuel my body with nutritious food while also enjoying food, because life is short. And it truly is a mentality that you have to practice. A big part of it was me journaling. I just always would journal about this and track my progress with how I was feeling towards food and towards running. And therapy is always helpful, at least for me. But yeah, I think that's all I want to say, honestly. Now when I go and, now the way that I approach running is that life is happening and running is always going to be there. I might travel. I might not wake up early one day, or not sleep early in order to wake up early enough for a run. Life happens, and we might not be able to stay consistent with running. We might not be able to be the best version of ourselves all the time, because that is simply not realistic, because we're human. Life is happening, and sometimes life, allows certain things to happen that, just makes us like not able to run or whatever. And so we have to kind of accept that. I had to accept that. So now I'm just like floating around. If I want to go for a run, I'll go for a run. If I don't, then I don't. Even though I'm a part of a team, somehow it's working out for me. It was a challenge. It was a challenge to take running seriously while also trying to go easy on myself. And it's always going to be a challenge. And it's never going to be perfect. And it's different for everyone. But, every day it's me telling myself, how do I feel about this? Trying to keep an awareness with my mind to body connection. Communication is so important. If you're a part of a team, communicate to your coach or coaches how you feel. If you want to take a mental health break, let them know. I feel like that's honestly really good advice, because I know how hard it is to have the courage to go up to a coach and be like, hey, I just don't feel good mentally. Like, I just want to take some days off. A good coach should understand. But I know that it takes a lot of courage to do that. And just know that it's okay. It's totally okay. That's not a selfish thing at all. So, yeah. That's pretty much it. I don't really know what else to say. Let me try to think if I have anything else to say. When it feels like a chore, then you're probably not doing it right. When it feels like, I have to go for a run, probably not a good sign. But when you're like, oh my god, I want to go for a run, probably a good sign. That one. I recently had that second emotion. I was like, oh my god, I want to go for a run. Like, I'm so excited. And that's when I learned that I'm healing and that I'm, improving my relationship with running, which is a very big thing for me. So I hope this makes sense. I hope this allows you to understand how running has helped me, slow down in life. Take a second to breathe and understand myself through the sport. Goodbye, everyone.